Hello, everybody, and welcome to another video of ours. This is our first-time home buyer SoCal market update video. It is December 11th, 2020. That means we only have 2 weeks before Christmas. I cannot believe how busy we are here this time of year. For most people in real estate, that period of time between November and December is usually a bit of a sleepier, lazier period. Actually, my assistant is on vacation, or has been the past week. I figured this would be a very quiet time of the year, and instead I've spent the last 2 days at home inspections. So it is definitely not a quiet time of the year for us. This week we have a t-shirt. It is Zombie Dust. This is actually a beer from a brewery in Indiana called Three Floyds Brewery. And if you remember when you were in school, there were always those kids that drew those really crazy, like awesome sort of, drawings, like think kind of like Game of Thrones level, or, maybe even Lord of the Rings type drawings. And you thought, like, what are those kids going to do when they grow up? Because they don't usually get very good grades. Well, those kids started a brewery, and it is Three Floyds Brewery in Indiana. And I will say the Zombie Dust beer is actually quite good, which is why I bought the t-shirt when I visited. Now, the title of this week's video is about the best time of the year to buy, and is it really that good? And that's kind of a bit of a complicated question, but I think it's a question that's really coming up for a lot of people right now who are considering buying or thinking of going to the marketplace. Like, our market in Southern California is a little different than other parts of the country. We don't have a snow season where things completely slow down. So we have less seasonality. But we definitely have periods of time that are busier and less busier. And historically, this kind of period as we approach that holiday, that Christmas, New Year holiday, is usually a slower time. And I would say this year it is a little bit slower than it has been. I don't know how much slower that is. Let's jump into the slides and we'll kind of get to it. As we jump in, of course, our first thing is we talk about the affordability and the availability of housing. So this is our affordability chart, and we kind of do things a little bit differently. In order to give a statistic that maybe is a little bit more geared towards first-time home buyers, we look at homes that are at the 25% level in Los Angeles and Orange County. So we take a look and we say, what about those entry-level single-family homes, those 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes? Instead of going to the midway price point, we actually go to the 25% price level to kind of give an approximation of that. And, if you look at this chart here, I think it's important to, kind of look at this over time. Back here towards the end of August, we were in these low 6s, and then we've kind of hovered through. And one of the things that's important to understand about home prices, and I'm going to go off this here because I think this is really important. And most people think that home prices go like this. Like when we say prices are going up, in their mind, it looks like this, right? Like this nice line, and home prices are going up. Well, guess what? That is not the way it works at all. Instead, it kind of looks more like this, like up, flat, jump up, then maybe dip a little, then go up. Like it's not really a linear sense of momentum. So you have sort of these, and in a very fast moving market like the one we have, you actually have sort of even weeks of time that definitely feel busier than others because of some inventory constriction, or sometimes it's even just the fact that inventory might be low in the particular buying class that you're looking in, right? Like if you are looking at single family homes in Orange, maybe there just aren't that many right now, and that's kind of fueling that market. And if you look at this graph here, you can see that things aren't perfectly smooth either. And in the past, I would have thought that a lot of this was noise, and maybe some of it is, but our sample size is probably about 400 houses when we do this. So you'll notice in this past week, we saw a dip. Now note, these are closed prices. So this is basically the way things were the first week in November. And you saw there was a big jump, in the last week. And I think what's important to understand about that is that you really want to have your ears to the ground when it comes to how is the market actually doing, right? And so because we've gotten a little bit of relief and mortgage rates have stayed low, it means when we take a look at our monthly payment, things are actually looking pretty good this week. And if you see this I think the real story here is if you are in the market for an entry-level home, things are about the same price as they were. You see they've been hovering 3,500 and change, 3,496, 3,622. Things have really been hovering near that 2018 price point. Really, that's great, right? Because when you think about it, that means that in 2 years' time, houses haven't gone any, there has been zero inflation in the payment you pay for this sort of first quartile home or this 25% level entry level home. And again, these numbers are based on a 5% down payment, and they include mortgage insurance, estimates for taxes, homeowners insurance. So this really is a total payment based on 5% down and excellent credit. If we go over here and we take a look for our entry level condos, we see kind of a similar thing happening, right? Except in this case, condos have actually not performed as well as they did in 2018, and they've been consistently less expensive. The final graph, and I just kind of throw this one in here for fun, it moves the same directions, but it really gives people some context, is what is the minimum income required with no other debts to be able to afford that level of property? What's that minimum household income you see for our entry-level single family? Right around $85,000 a year. So it hovers between 85 and 90. And then right here in the mid 60s for our entry-level condo. And again, our entry-level condo is actually a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo. We tried to provide a little bit of context there as well. So, if you're looking from our affordability standpoint, I think we have seen some rises, but a lot of this is going to be market dependent. Personally, out in the field right now, I feel like the market is, this week at least, in a little bit of a softer period of time. And the data is kind of interesting and conflicting about that. If you follow our regular video where we look at the whole market, we do look at days on market, and that actually jumped in the past week a few days. That might not seem like a lot to some people, but that can be indicative of a market that, while still brisk, is at least a little bit more buyer friendly than it would have been in the weeks past. Now, if we jump in and we talk about our housing availability, I think that's really kind of what maybe provides a little bit more focus on this sense of availability of housing. So if you look, our absorption rates have actually gotten, they've either stayed the same for our single family or gotten better. Now, we are still close to 100%, and that does mean that is what I would call a hyper competitive market, meaning you just don't have a lot of inventory coming up. But something that's very important to remember, and I'm gonna kill the screen share just for a second, is that you might have heard this term seasonally adjusted when you hear on the news and they talk about housing sales seasonally adjusted, right? And the reason for that is we do notice a difference in the number of homes that take place as we go through summer and into fall. That number does come down. So that notion of seasonal adjustability is definitely there. We expect inventory to fall as we go into the fall. That is a very normal thing in a very normal market, is that you basically find that people are very reticent and reluctant to put their homes on the market during this time period. A lot of times it's because people don't want to move. They have a lot going on. They might have family. They might have a lot of other things happening in their lives, and they don't want to put their home on the market. Now, it's funny, buyers tend to not always have those same restrictions, right? Because if you think about this, if you were a buyer, right, if you bought a home tomorrow, if you went into escrow tomorrow in a home, that is December 12th, you would be closing the middle of January. That's not really inconvenient at all, right? And as a buyer, all you have to do is get in your car and go look at houses. You don't have to pack. You don't have to constantly clean your house and prep it for sale. So there's a lot of reasons why inventory tends to tighten as we go towards the end of the year. Now, the exception to that is in a down market, sometimes inventory will actually stay the same or go up. But in a market like this, inventory is definitely decreasing, and I'll show that here in a second. So back to this absorption rate, our absorption rates are still incredibly strong, right? We're off of this. We had this sort of blip around Thanksgiving for these entry-level single-family homes where just a bunch of inventory got eaten up. I still think our market is fairly inventory constricted, but what I'm hearing on the street and what we're sort of experiencing is there are fewer buyers than there were, and those buyers are tending to be a little pickier. So we're noticing the homes that maybe don't show that great, That's really where the softness in this market is hitting. It's not the ones that get labeled a hot home instantly on Redfin. It's the ones that maybe have been hanging out a little bit longer. Now, if we go and take a look at our total inventory, I think this really tells that inventory story, right? I mean, if our peak inventory here was around 1,900 single family condos, we are now down to 1,600. Actually, I think we're technically slightly below. And if we were looking at our entry level single family homes, our peak was again, high 1,800s, and now we are down to 1,400 and change in terms of our overall inventory. So what's happening is we're seeing either homes getting taken off the market because they haven't sold, which is also another common thing that sellers will do. If they had a home on the market that is not selling, they will pull it right around this time of year and then try again in the new year. That's a very common thing that we're seeing. And we are seeing most of the new inventory getting eaten up by the buyers. If we look at our week's supply of homes, I think we have kind of something really interesting happening, and that is this is the closest that condos and single families have been ever. If you look, the condo figures, finally some of this back inventory is being eaten up, which is kind of great. We're not seeing a lot of new condos come on the market, and we are seeing a lot of buyers continue to snap them up. Single family homes, we've kind of seen reductions in both fewer buyers, and we're seeing fewer new homes and fewer homes coming onto the market. So, kind of an interesting point. I think that, if you're the kind of person waiting for that moment where, finally supply meets up with demand and we're in kind of a soft market, I don't see that happening anytime soon. I think the best you're going to do is this period of time as we get close to Christmas. We're now within that 2-week window, right? Within 3 weeks of New Year's. This is a period that's a little bit quieter. So if you've been sitting on the sidelines, maybe out of pre-approval, and you just haven't liked how the market's felt, I definitely think now is a time to jump in. People are getting houses. Houses are going pending. And even though inventory is dropping, I don't think it's that much of an issue. I think we are seeing you're competing against fewer buyers, and frankly, you might be competing against fewer buyers who are super well qualified, like cash buyers, etc. We're seeing the buyers that are in the marketplace now are the ones that tend to maybe have lower down payments. They're the people that can't let up in their home search. Anyhow, that kind of concludes our market update for first-time home buyers. Couple things. Number one, we launched our podcast this week. You can find that on YouTube. We are also on Spotify, and we are pending Apple approval. So it is the Domicile RE Real Estate Podcast. Pretty simple. This week's guest, we make mortgage lending sexy, almost. Our guest is a longtime lender that we have worked with and referred clients to, Paul Cawthorn. We talk about fair housing, where are interest rates going, as well as whether this market looks like the 2006-2007 market or whether it looks different. Really, it's a great way to spend 25 minutes. If you have to drive somewhere, definitely put it on the car there, or you can watch us on YouTube. We have that on our YouTube channel, which you should be liking, subscribing, and hitting that notification bell if you have not done so. Anyhow, thanks so much for watching. Questions, comments, we love them. If you would love to work with us in the Southern California area, we would love to talk to you, and we schedule 15-minute introductory Zoom calls, and we can see if it's a good fit. So just reach out to us and let us know, and we will see you next week.